Hi guys. Conversion of the advantage in chess is a very difficult task. I'm sure you have played many games where you managed to create the advantage, you managed to win a piece or even a pawn, perhaps even more than a piece, and you still failed to convert the advantage, well, for numerous reasons. You either let the advantage escape, or perhaps the opponent managed to escape, liquidate to a drawish endgame. So this in fact is a very technical task to convert the advantage. You know how to do that properly in order to elevate your game to the next level. I'm going to show you an example taken from my own practice. This is going to be a game I played in 2018 in the Isle of Man chess.com Open. I played this game with white against Indian FIDE master Rakesh Kulkarni, and let's just jump right into it. d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, e3. This is inspired by the book E3 Poison by Axel Smith. I recommend it. At the moment of the game I was really a big fan of it, and well, let's see if I manage to get the opening advantage. b3, bishop e7, bishop b2, castles, pawn takes d4, e takes d4. I remember already considering to be slightly better for me because, well, typically black should have certain pawn breaks, certain possibilities to challenge white's pawn formation in the center. And I felt that, well, if black is going to play a move like d5 very quickly, then he will struggle to play b6, bishop b7, because then the bishop is, of course, going to be restricted by black's own pawn. At the same time, if black doesn't go d5, he will not really fight for the center effectively. So this must have been a dilemma for my opponent. He went b6, which is probably the most flexible move. Knight bd2, bishop b7. I played a3, which is generally prophylactical move against knight b4, which, as analysis shows, well, it was possible to play this move earlier, and I expected this to be very annoying in certain lines, especially once I play queen e2. So first I played a3. I knew this move is going to be necessary, or at least very helpful. Rook c8, rook c1. So as you see, white is not playing c4 before black plays d5. There was a reason for that, because if black goes d5, I don't really want him to challenge my own pawn on c4. Black went d5. I played rook e1, which is, well, it has to be evaluated as a not really precise move. Queen e2 would have been much stronger. It's quite clear that the queen needs to be involved in the game. It controls this f1 a6 diagonal more efficiently. It also supports knight e5, and actually the rook on f1 may be used for potential f4 f5 breaks. So I'm pretty sure queen e2 would have been much stronger. Well, I didn't manage to solve this riddle in the game, so well, there you go. Rook e1 a6, queen e2, a bit too late. b5, queen e3, another move which is not really precise. At this point it was necessary to do what I did a moment later, a move later, which is generally b4. You might be surprising by this move, because at the end of the day it does leave this c4 square quite tempting for black, and specifically knight d7, knight b6, knight c4 looks like a very tasty idea. On the other hand, white can play knight b3, knight c5. So we have this discussion who is going to be faster, which square, c5 versus c4, is going to be much more important, which is going to be more important, and, well, if the difference is going to be significant. So b4 proves, at the end of the day, b4 proves to be the strongest move here, which I failed to understand at the moment of the game. However, after queen c7, I did play b4, with the clear intention of occupying c5 square with my knight. Black went a5, and this needs to be well, evaluated as a bad move. Black was supposed to play knight d7, knight b3, knight b6, knight c5, and if knight c5, black goes knight c4 with decent play. It's probably sufficient to evaluate it like that. If black manages to deprive white of the light squared bishop, he needs to be satisfied. This didn't happen. My opponent went a5, and after c3, he probably realized that, well, this was white's plan all along. And yes, this may look like a ridiculous pawn structure, especially when you consider that there is a bishop on b2, completely locked behind these pawns. Are we playing chess or checkers? Yes, I kind of realized that I'm playing very... well, everything I did so far was really against any positional rules. However, I also understood that the weakness on b5, the pawn on b5, may be more than compensating for my strange kind of play. And black has a huge problem here. A takes b4, c takes b4. Well, if that takes place at any point, so if pawn takes, I'm happy to recapture with the c pawn. The bishop on b2 is protecting the pawn on d4 and also indirectly e5 square. So even though it's restricted by the pawn on d4, as Aaron Nimzowicz would state it, a piece which is overprotecting significantly important object needs to be considered as an active piece. It performs a very important function, so you shouldn't really complain about its position. Well, I would definitely not. So, as mentioned, I went c3, my opponent played queen b6, now knight b3. Keep in mind that now that the black queen is protecting the pawn on b5, this b6 square is occupied by the queen and therefore cannot be used by the knight. So, already some achievement for white. He went bishop a6, queen e2. I realized that the queen was misplaced on e3. Good for me. And at least at the end I managed to realize what the mistake was. Rook e8, and here I also didn't play the most precise move, which I have to admit. I played knight e5, which looked like a very promising try. Apparently knight c5 was even stronger, so the threat is very simple. I just want to take, and after queen takes a6, I take on b5. So the pawn is simply going to be lost, which virtually forces black to take on c5, and when that happens, I can just take on c5 with the b pawn, and after queen b7 play a4. And generally speaking, this pin, in connection with the pressure I managed to put on the pawn on b5, proves to be, well, a killer for black. He's generally speaking paralyzed, and after for example rook b8, I can play rook b1, and then, well, there are new rerouting possibilities for the bishop. Bishop c1, bishop f4 seems like a very promising and powerful try, not to mention that black is basically paralyzed. I can play wherever I want, any way I want, full domination. Well, this just wasn't the day for precision. However, knight e5 is still a very strong move. A takes b4, so black cannot maintain the pressure. The threat behind knight e5 was just actually capturing on c6, followed by capturing on a5. So it's not that I made a move which was played without a purpose. However, knight c5 was just objectively stronger. So here, as mentioned, my opponent took on b4, I recaptured the pawn, and after knight takes e5, pawn takes, knight d7, we reach the position I wanted to discuss in the first place. Clearly, white has an advantage. This is connected with control over the space, and first and foremost, actually, with the activity that he has, or you could actually rephrase that with black's really passive pieces. First of all, the bishop on a6. I'm sure we will all agree this bishop is a very passive piece. It does perform a function, however, this is, well, not really what black would love to do with the bishop. There is also the queen on b6, which is just involved in a defensive role, so again, not particularly impressive. It's also hard to find good spots for the knight and the bishop. It looks like they achieved everything so far. And in the meantime, thanks to his space advantage, white can very easily just try to play on kingside. So a move like f4, of course, once the g1, a7 diagonal is covered, because currently there is a queen there. So white can play f4, followed by f5. Generally speaking, well, you might assume that there will be a destruction going on kingside. At the moment of the game, I felt that, well, I'm just about to win that. After all, I'm playing knight d4, I'm attacking the pawn on b5. If he goes rook b8, I will play rook c6, penetrating his position, and, well, it's just a matter of time. As you're going to see in a moment, this wasn't so easy. And analysis proved that bishop d4 would have been much stronger, because after queen b8 and the exchange, I can shift the play to kingside. And this is exactly the conversion part I'm already talking about. White has a beautiful positional advantage. It's not yet material advantage, but you don't always need the material advantage to occur on the board to have a winning position. Basically, the black pieces, in particular the bishop on a6 and the rook on c8, are out of play. What I failed to realize in the game was that the black rook is simply shooting into void. Rook c2, impossible. Rook c3, possible. Rook c4, well, technically possible, but you would never expect this move to be played on the board. So the black's pieces are really forced to stay on the queen side, and there is nothing going on there. In the meantime, white is really free to go f5, g4, well, whatever you imagine, it will be possible. So isolation of pieces and taking advantage of the space you have in order to shift the play under appropriate circumstances is a very important strategic concept. This is how you can actually, under specific conditions, turn your positional advantage into a full point. At the moment of the game, I went knight d4, which I believed to be very strong. However, after knight d4, there is rook c4, which I completely missed. And surprisingly, capturing on c4 is not the strongest, which I, of course, played. The much more stronger move is queen g4, which, again, I was really surprised to see because, well, it was so just tempting to take the rook. However, again, it proves to be inaccurate because, again, there is nothing going on for black. Black cannot do anything. Black is paralyzed. He can play knight f8, but then white just plays h4, caveman attack, effective as usual. And for example, rook d8 or rook c8, it doesn't really matter. Rook cd1 just sidesteps any play on c-file. So even though this rook can be captured, it just doesn't pay off because then, well, black just recaptures with the bishop, with the pawn, and then the bishop gets activated. This is basically the whole concept my opponent tried to utilize in the game, which he kind of managed. And here, once I play rook c2 d1 and completely ignore what he's trying to do on queenside, I can shift the play to kingside by playing, for example, rook e3, rook g3. Apologies for all of the arrows, but I'm sure you understand what where I'm going with this. Generally speaking, both of the bishops can be involved in the attack on kingside. There is the powerful queen there. Any rook lift is possible. In the meantime, you see that the majority of the black's pieces are tied down on queenside without any prospects, without any possibility of changing the part of the board they are currently on. So I did take on c4. he recaptured, and luckily I realized that the most promising way for me to convert this advantage is actually to play very actively. If you look at this position, okay, white is up in exchange, great. On the other hand, the rooks are the strongest when they have open files. And due to the exchange on c4, the c file is permanently closed. On top of that, the bishop, which was just a disastrous piece a moment ago, can be transferred to b7 and occupy this, well, optimal diagonal. So if that happens, and also if black somehow manages to transfer the knight to d5, of course, first you will just remaneuver the queen. In fact, black may get quite a promising position. It's never going to be advantageous, but with proper play, black can expect a certain degree of compensation. So again, I realized that this is the moment where I need to show who's dominating the board, who is in control, who's in command, and therefore queen g4. A very strong move, which it looks like a simple one, but actually it's not. Whenever you have the advantage, your first instinct tells you simplify, go to the endgame, try to exchange queens, take it easy, don't force the matters, step back, right? Here, on contrary, white really needs to take over the initiative once more, because otherwise black is going to be very fast to regroup his pieces. So we always need to consider who is going to benefit from, well, wasting time is not the right way to put it, but from delaying direct play. Apparently here, white cannot waste any time. So queen g4, queen b7, rook c2 d1. For those of you who feel quite advanced, try to calculate knight takes e6. This is a very interesting idea. Rook c2 d1 was played. You might be wondering what I'm even trying to do. Well, I did prepare knight takes e6 threat, plus the rook was not doing much on c file. He went knight b6 and bishop c1. This is another benefit of putting the rook on d1. Right now, the bishop, so the worst placed piece, because it was just shooting the knight and the pawn, the bishop can be transferred and effectively used on kingside. Good. Bishop f8, rook e3. Another piece comes into play. There is no time to be wasted, because again, if black is given enough time, he's going to put the knight on d5, use his open diagonal, and let's not forget, he also has a passer on c4. It's not yet dangerous, but when the position is going to be simplified, it might prove to be a valuable pawn. Black went rook d8, rook h3, so it's just transition to a fully legitimate attack. Queen c7, and here, well, I just managed to find this winning tactical concept. If you feel like practicing a little bit, make sure you pause this video and try to already find the winning idea for white. Make sure to pause the video right now, because I'm going to reveal the truth. So the winning idea is just to go queen h4, and after h6, the bishop sack proves to be very strong. Basically, if black goes g takes h6, there is rook g3 check, and after king h7, queen g4, and, well, either queen g8 or queen g7 is going to be checkmate very soon. So he didn't accept it. He played rook takes d4, and here rook takes d4, queen takes e5, last moment of precision required, bishop e3, simply covering the back rank. Make sure you never blunder that, because it can be very painful. f5, and just believe me that the following sequence of moves is really the strongest. I went queen d8, knight d5, and now again came up with this powerful tactical idea. Rook h8 check, king takes, queen takes f8, king h7, rook h4, king g8, queen e8 check. Everything comes by force. Basically, if black goes king f6, there's bishop to d4. And now I'm going to reveal something that I never told anyone. I didn't see that when I was calculating. However, I saw a different concept. If black goes king f6, this was my original idea. Again, I'm an international master. I didn't see bishop d4 in my calculation. Instead, I saw rook h6 check. And after g takes h6, queen h8. Nice skewer, isn't it? Again, I'm not really proud that I didn't see bishop d4, but this is quite a nice idea. So eventually, white just wins the queen, and this is what matters the most. So you might be wondering, how is this even conversion? After all, you basically started attacking the guy. First you won an exchange and then started attacking. What's the big deal about that? Again, as I was mentioning, whenever you're converting the advantage, regardless of the type of it, well, we are generally told that the quickest and easiest way to convert is to simplify. Here, as you can see, till the end of the game, my opponent didn't manage to use his bishop, and I was really afraid that he would do that. And therefore, it was really important to understand that the decision that was required from me was to play very actively, as fast as possible, not even giving my opponent the chance to consolidate. Because if that ever happened, I would probably not manage to win that. So conversion doesn't have to be easy, but as long as you manage to find the right decision, it should be pretty easy. Thanks for watching.